Sphere from 1998 is one of those movies where I just wonder what the hell happened. This is probably one of my favorite Michael Crichton novels. I don't think it's his best work. I don't think it's the best story. It's a comfort food read. Give me scientists on the ocean floor trying to figure out some extraterrestrial event. I'm down. This was a project whose budget, it looks like, doubled, primarily due to filming being shut down for 6 months. I think they stopped shooting in October of 1996 and didn't start again till March of 97. That apparently had to do with rewrites. There are a couple of things I like in this movie. I like the opening credits. They're very similar to Island of Dr. Moreau and Mimic. I like the first scene where Dustin Hoffman is talking to Huey Lewis, the helicopter pilot, because the dialogue is pretty much verbatim from the book. That's about it. The first thing I don't understand is Barry Levinson directing. I know he had done Disclosure a few years earlier, a film that did well at the time. I don't think it particularly holds up for many reasons I'm not going to go into. But Sphere is a sci-fi horror story, psychological horror story. Just the kind of project that Levinson would seem to be so obviously out of his depth. I just don't know why you wouldn't have picked a director more familiar with horror tropes and creating tension on screen. The screenplay was written by Kurt Wimmer. He's definitely written his share of clunkers, but it was around this time he wrote The Thomas Crown Affair, the remake, and that was really well written. So it's just hard for me to imagine what would cause production to be halted for 6 months for rewrites. But the place where Sphere, the film, really misses the mark of the book seems to have to do with miscasting every part and misjudging what the novel is about. I'll speak to the second part first. On the surface, Sphere is a novel about exploration and trying to understand this alien horror at the bottom of the ocean. That's the obvious threat, but that's not what makes Sphere scary. What makes Sphere scary is the idea that you have a psychologist who's hired by a previous administration to write a report on how to address alien contact. And the psychologist who writes the report, Dr. Norman Johnson, ends up suggesting a staff for alien contact based on scientists he knows, several of whom were clients of his. A report he doesn't actually ever expect to be taken seriously by anyone in the government. The fear in the story is not about the alien threat as much as the fact that you're a psychologist who has chosen patients of yours who are extremely neurotic to be the human vanguard when meeting a potentially hostile alien life form. In other words, you can't trust any of these people to necessarily do the right thing because they all have serious problems. It's not a story about a cool scientific investigation. It's a story about a botched investigation being handled by a bunch of crazy people who are all liabilities to their own and everyone else's safety. And since it's the nature of movies to cast popular or good-looking actors and actresses, all of the actors they chose for the parts in Sphere are completely wrong for the characters in the book. Harry Adams, played by Samuel Jackson, is supposed to be a young mathematics prodigy. He's supposed to be temperamental, suspicious, someone who's grown up with a big chip on their shoulder for being called a nerd their whole life. someone who has such high intelligence that he doesn't know how to properly interact with other people. This translates in the movie to Samuel Jackson just acting weird. Misses the character entirely. Beth Freeman, played by Sharon Stone. Beth Freeman's character in the novel Sphere is a woman who has a chip on her shoulder because not being attractive has caused her to be ignored by too many of her male superiors. She's been the victim of sexism for not being attractive enough. So they cast Sharon Stone in that part. Again, completely wrong for the character. Dustin Hoffman as Norman. Norman in the novel is supposed to be a psychologist in his, I believe, late 50s. He's overweight. He's supposed to be conspicuously out of shape. He feels like the fifth wheel for much of the action. Norman Johnson's character in the book is all about feeling inadequate to the task. He's the one character most everybody wants to ignore. But again, because of the conventions of a Hollywood movie, he's cast in the film more as the stable center. Again, it's a complete misread of the book. Then you've got Peter Coyote as Colonel Barnes. Physically completely wrong for the character. Also tonally wrong. Peter Coyote plays Barnes like he's this crazy, suspicious asshole from the moment the film begins. In the book, Barnes is supposed to be very straight-ahead, can-do military man. He gets irritated with things breaking down, but he's often a affable or at least neutral character in the story, although he does have a hidden agenda. Liev Schreiber as Ted Fielding. Ted Fielding is supposed to be an astrophysicist whose career opportunities are long gone. He's supposed to be this irritating older character who keeps trying to take the spotlight and make big speeches about what's going on, to the annoyance of everyone else. Again, physically wrong for the part, tonally wrong for the part. Queen Latifah as Teenie Fletcher. That actually is a good bit of casting, but they don't give her any scenes in the film. She says, I think, like 2 lines in the whole thing. Much larger character in the book. Yeah, wrong director, wrong casting, wrong take on the material, or no take on the material. And one other thing would be no attention to authenticity in the design of the undersea habitat. And Crichton packs the novel with scary details about working underwater in exotic gas environments that would make you never want to be in one. And that's another thing that contributes to the sense of danger in Sphere. There are a lot of ways you can die working in an exotic gas environment besides just running out of oxygen, but none of it ends up in the film. The sets don't even resemble anything like a real underwater facility that are designed specifically for efficiency and conserving space. It's supposed to be cramped. The interior of the spaceship they discover is supposed to be enormous. And this would be a place where you could have used the CG to create giant spaces. They couldn't even do that right. The Sphere itself isn't supposed to be this shiny, glowing, Christmas ornament looking thing. It's supposed to look like a big ball bearing. Featureless except for one set of grooves on one side. God, I just hate this fucking movie. What a mess.